Welcome to a ride on the outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zan Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the MMA Outsiders. It is episode 74. I am Zain Bando along with Pat, Danna, and today we have a whole lot to get to as March is finally here. We have mixed martial arts to talk about, we have boxing to talk about, and so much more. But before we get into everything on the show, we wanted to remind you to please like and subscribe to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network because we are slowly but surely approaching around 800-ish subscribers. So every single like and subscribe helps. You can do so at youtube.com/ETB Network. You can follow the network all across social media at ETB Network. You can follow the MMA Outsiders across social media at MMA Outsiders ETB. Again, and my name is Zain Bando. I'm a Sunday news writer for MMA Knockout and a staff writer for BJPen.com. Pat Danna over here is a combat sports UK journalist who's putting out great work both on the exclusive interview side and on the article writing side. So be sure to check out his work at Pat Danna MMA, and you can find all of my work over at Bando99. And of course, this show is presented by Wolf Spreads, as is every other show on the ETB network. So for those of you who don't know what Wolf Spreads is, we're going to go through kind of what it is here in just a second. So are you looking to get involved in the action while rooting for your favorite team? Have you ever had a friendly debate as to who could pick more games correctly? Does all this talk about parlays, lines, and over-unders make your head spin? And do you want to learn more about the sports betting hoopla? Come gamble with us and come check out Wolf Spreads. We're running a sports betting competition completely free in the Wolf Spreads app where every single person gets 2,000 fantasy dollars. You can enter into a competition. It's a week-long competition for nearly every single sport, and whoever can profit the most fantasy dollars or fake money wins the competition for that week. It has competitions for nearly every major sport, so be sure to go check it out and enter into the various competitions and really try to do your best to learn more about everything that Wolf Spreads has to offer. As you know, this whole gambling craze has really started to pick up a little bit. It is yet to add combat sports, and it does. I'm sure we're going to add more Wolf Spread elements into the show moving forward. But speaking of the show, Pat, it seems like we have a whole lot to get into. We had a whole lot that took place this past weekend. Can you kind of break down what we're going to be talking about today and why this beginning stage of March is so important in the combat sports world?
Yeah, no, today we're just kind of breaking down, UFC Vegas 87, the last UFC card we have, and then, next week's massive UFC 299 card, which a lot of people say may be better than UFC 300. Either way, both amazing cards. And we also get into Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua a bit, a potential 165-pound division, and a big gift for Khabib Nurmagomedov back in the day that never really got revealed. So we definitely have some interesting topics to get into today.
For sure, it should definitely be a very fun show, and it should definitely be a lot of exciting stuff to go over. And I'm looking forward to it as the UFC is still in its craze of 11 consecutive events that goes all the way to April 13th. And as you just alluded to, UFC 299 could very well be bigger and better than the aforementioned UFC 300 taking place in Las Vegas. So, without further ado, are you ready to preview UFC 299 and see if we're going to have Ann Stiller and new or what?
Let's get into it. Can't wait.
All right, so we're starting out. We're going to preview UFC 299, starting with the main event, the long-awaited rematch that's now 4 years in the making. Sean O'Malley taking on Marlon Chito Vera for the UFC bantamweight title. This fight has had a ton of heat on it for a long time now. Obviously, Sean O'Malley just recently won the UFC bantamweight championship with a knockout victory over Aljamain Sterling in August at UFC 292. What are you expecting in this rematch, and does it go quite differently compared to the first one? Because I would certainly say so, especially considering that Sean O'Malley is now 100%.
Yeah, this is weird matchup just in terms of styles. Like if you look at them style for style, side by side, definitely presents some interesting advantages both guys have. Chito definitely has the better defense, the better chin. He's known for really being able to like roll with shots, block them off his arms and stuff. And O'Malley is known to throw volume, so it's going to be interesting for sure to see how O'Malley kind of deals with that defense of Cheeto. Obviously, there's the heat in this fight. They both had problems. O'Malley comes into this fight on like 6 fight winning streak, all for their first fight. Won the title against Aljamain Sterling with a thunderous right hand in round 2. So that was definitely an impressive win. He kind of turned people's opinions on him with that win, and I'm interested to see how Cheeto shows up in this fight. I think it's going to be a good Sean O'Malley performance, I'd say. I'd say he probably holds the edge in terms of just volume and accuracy and like I don't know. I'm just not sure what Cheeto's going to be doing in this fight. If he's just doing his regular like sit back and wait style, I don't know if he finds that knockout against O'Malley because O'Malley's proven very hard to finish. So I think I favor O'Malley in this one, and I think he'll probably get it done throughout the distance over 5 rounds.
Okay. It's very interesting. Yeah, I don't see Sean O'Malley being able to knock out Marlon Vera either. And if he does, it's definitely going to be later in the fight. I'm going to stick with you and say that Sean O'Malley walks away and still the UFC Bantamweight champion of the world um, by decision, which leads me to, I guess, a follow-up question. At the time we're recording this, or no, at the time that this is going to get released, this interview is now going to be 2 days old. But Sean O'Malley did an interview in his brand new Sprinter van with ESPN's Berto Komodo, and he had mentioned something very interesting. He wants to eventually fight in a super fight against Ilia Topuria, and as everybody knows, Ilia Topuria just became the UFC featherweight champion with a knockout over Alexander Volkanovski, and he called for a main event slot against Ilya at UFC 306 at the Spear. I just wanted to get your thoughts on if that's a fight you'd be interested in seeing. Do you think it's too quick of a super fight considering that O'Malley has barely gotten his feet wet with contenders at Bantam? What do you think the UFC does from here? Sean O'Malley actually does pull through and exact revenge on Marlon Vera, because I think there's that option, but I think also too you have to consider the fact that if this fight is close, they may want to do a trilogy just because there's still history there.
That's a good point. I didn't think about the trilogy aspect of this. They definitely could be interested in looking at a third fight depending on how this fight goes. I really hope they don't, honestly, though. I hope they let the winner be the winner of this fight because bantamweight's kind of clogged right now. You got Corey Sandhagen, you got Marab, you got a bunch of guys that are right there for a title shot that deserve it and that are asking for it. If Cheeto's getting the title shot here, Corey Sandhagen deserves a title shot. So there's definitely a lot that O'Malley still has to do at 135 pounds, and I don't think Ilia Topuria would really be a ideal matchup for him. I think he still needs to grow as a champion, needs to grow in his own weight class. I think it's too soon for him, especially Ilya too. I mean, Sean O'Malley will be having his first title defense here, but Ilya hasn't even had his first title defense yet. He just won the title last month. So my my whole thing with this is can we defend the title in our weight class before we start talking about moving up, fighting other champions, this, that? Like, just defend the title once at least. Like, there used to be a standard here. There used to be, if you have a couple title defenses, maybe, but no, there's no standard anymore. I mean, everyone's just calling for whatever they want. I mean, I'm not a fan of it personally. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, ever since this, moving between weight classes thing was established by Conor McGregor 8 or so years ago, I think who's in your division has been kind of out the window. I don't know if it'll ever go back to that again, but yeah, you do bring up a great point that the divisions are not in unison as they once used to be, and you would think that Sean O'Malley winning the bantamweight title would give 135 a breath of fresh air, but now that he's talking about super fights, the UFC may be in a bind where the division could be held up for, maybe a year to maybe 2 years. It's because, he's made it very clear that he's a prize fighter and he wants to make the most money he possibly can. And I don't blame him given how old he is and given that, he is approaching 30 years old and longevity is a big deal. But yeah, the unison thing is a great point. But I'm going to have to tend to disagree with you here. I think the UFC is going to have to strike where the iron's hot. They know they want to go to Spain, and the biggest fight that they can make while Volk is on the shelf with a question be Toronto versus Ilya Topuria in Spain. I actually think that fight is a bigger fight in Spain than it would be in Las Vegas, and it's a fight that I would definitely would love to see at some point this year or early next year, 100%.
The way I see it, it really doesn't matter who Ilya fights in Spain because I think he's just going to be selling out tickets, selling out the arena no matter what at this point. I mean, it's obviously not as big of a fight, right? But the Volk rematch, the Mobsar fight, even a Brian Ortega fight, I feel like any of those sell well enough to the point where the UFC doesn't really have to reach into the the champ versus champ tool of it. And I think that they could really get away with it, but I can't disagree that O'Malley and Ilya would be a massive fight in Spain and a massive fight in general. People in the US here would love it too. So I don't know. It's a tough one, but I lean on the side that I just think, there's too much going on in each weight class right now, and they both need to deal with the top guys in their division before they start worrying about the rest of the UFC.
And I guess the final question that I have for you in regards to this fight, given that Sean O'Malley is from Montana and given that Chito Vera is from Brazil, what do you think of Miami as a backdrop for this fight? And do you think this is the location where this fight should be? Do you think that this is the deserving location for a fight of this magnitude? Because personally, when I saw that this is going to be the headliner in Miami, I was quite surprised, just given that usually when you go to a market like Miami or a market outside of Vegas, they usually try to have some sort of hometown flavor to the main event, and we're getting none of that in this fight. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what you think of this particular main event taking place in Miami as opposed to somewhere else.
I think you do definitely make a good point with that. Usually there is, the headliner or someone like, you know, higher towards the card that is from the state. And that's why I think they have like guys like Dustin Poirier, Gilbert Burns on the card. I think someone else on the card too trains in Florida. So I think they have I think they have the Florida flair that's needed, especially Dustin Poirier. I mean, Poirier could have headlined this card, I guess, if you want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have had a big problem with it. But obviously not over O'Malley, but just in general, if that fight wasn't happening, Poirier and Benoit definitely could be a headliner on its own card, if you ask me. So I feel like Poirier and Burns will help Miami enough and the location enough. I think O'Malley Vera was just a fight that needed to happen, and it just so happened that they were going to be in Miami during the time that they wanted to do it. I do think, I guess it's strange, but I don't think they were going to go to Montana for it, and I don't. They favor O'Malley clearly, so I don't think they were going to go to Brazil for it either. So I don't really mind the Miami location.
For sure. And speaking of Dustin Poirier, let's go into the second 5-round fight in this card. We have Dustin Poirier taking on Benoit Saint Denis, number 3 versus number 12 in the UFC lightweight division. At this time that this is being released, my exclusive Dustin Poirier interview with MMA Knockout is now officially out. So be sure to go on MMA Knockout to check that out. He told me a lot of great things, but one of the things he told me was that he was genuinely surprised that this was the fight that was offered to him. He wanted to fight on UFC 300, but he preferred to fight closer to home so more of his friends and family could show up for the fight. When his fight was first announced, given who Dustin Poirier has fought in his career, is this a surprise to you? Because it was certainly a surprise to me, and it was certainly one of those fights where it's like, okay, Benoit Saint Denis is getting a huge step up in competition, but given where Dustin Poirier is in his career and given that he's 35 years old, you would think that at this point he'd only be getting big fights moving forward until he retires. So I was a little bit surprised, but it was definitely interesting to hear him say that he preferred to be on UFC 299 in a 5-round co-main event as opposed to opening UFC 300 on the main card just 5 weeks later in Vegas. So what are your impressions on this fight? And you think that do you think that this is a tune-up fight for Poirier, or do you think that Saint Anthony will take this very seriously because I think this is a chance to be a fight of the night and fight of the year contender.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely has the potential to be fireworks. This fight it has firework potential for sure. I'm a big fan of the matchup. Honestly, it definitely was a little surprising. I uh, I know Benoit I think called out Dustin after his last win, but it actually happening is pretty rare. The thing is with Benoit, he's on a great win streak, but none of the guys are ranked, and he's at the bottom of the lightweight rankings because he hasn't beat any big ranked names or anything. So it's definitely not someone we're used to Dustin seeing. I mean, at least Dustin's last 5 fights have all been like big money fights kind of thing. This is like the opposite, and I think it's because yeah, I think you're right. He kind of might want a little bit of a tune-up fight after the loss to Gaethje. Obviously, got knocked out pretty bad with that head kick, and might just kind of want to test where he is at this point in his career. Obviously, he's 35 years old. He's not a young fighter anymore, and I feel like this is a good fight to test where he really stands in his career. And for Benoit, I mean, I think he deserved a big step up in competition. The only issue is this too big of a step up? I guess we'll find out. So, yeah, what do you think?
Um, that's a great question. do think this is definitely an interesting test to see where he is. I just don't know if it's the right opponent given his legacies. Well, that's what was a surprise to me. And it's crazy how this sport works. Dustin Poirier loses to Justin Gaethje. It's Benoit Saint Denis, and then Justin Gaethje gets to defend his BMF against Max Holloway. So it's crazy just to see how this sport kind of works in mysterious ways sometimes. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say this should be a good one if Poirier does what he normally does, which is uses his boxing, uses his feints well, tries to shoot in for a couple of takedowns with Benoit Saint Denis in uncomfortable positions. He should be able to in either a clear decision or a late third round stoppage. I think the only way Saint Denis wins is if he catches him coming in with something weird and he wins in like the first 2 minutes. But I think that's really his only chance because given Poirier's stamina, there's no way that this won't be one of the hardest fights of Saint Denis' career, if not at his toughest. So it'll be very interesting to see. But I think experience is experience, and I got Poirier, home the W very similarly to you for sure.
Yeah, no, I think I think the experience difference. We'll definitely see the experience difference here. The only way I wouldn't say Benoit has to catch him with something coming in. If he wrestles heavily, there's a chance he could submit Dustin too. So I'd say if he comes in with a very wrestling heavy style, there's a chance he could get an early win. But I would have to agree that outside of those first 2 rounds, it looks pretty like grim. If Benoit doesn't get Poirier out of there in the first two, I don't like his chances to finish him later into that fight. I like as the longer the fight goes, I feel like the more it's going to favor Dustin and just that veteran experience. And I mean, his hands just stay sharp through all 5 rounds, and I think that's going to be something that Benoit has obviously never dealt with in his career. So because of that, I'm going to have to agree with you, and I think I'm going to say Poirier round 4 TKO would be my prediction.
Yeah, I'll take Poirier as well. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a third round TKO finish, but I could very well see this going the distance. And also one other thing that I failed to mention too that I think is critically important is that you have to remember too, this has been Wes Anthony's first ever 5 round fight. So I think handling the pressure of the championship rounds, although I'm sure he's been prepping for the last 11 to 12 weeks or however long it's been. You've never been in a 5 round fight until you've actually been in one. So I think that'll be the most difficult part, assuming that he doesn't get him out in the first round. But again, a very interesting fight and a fight that I'm definitely looking forward to.
Yeah, to be
And
fair. Oh wait, hold up.
oh,
To be
go ahead.
fair for Benoit Saint Denis though, obviously he's never been in a main event yet, so we can't judge it. But the reason he doesn't go past 3 rounds normally is because, I mean, 13-1 with 13 finishes. I mean, the guy usually doesn't need to go that deep into fights. So it'll be interesting to see if this fight does get into those later rounds. Just what he looks like, if he still has stamina, what his punches look like. Like I'll be very interested in that. But continue.
Oh no, I was just saying, to wrap up that I'm looking forward to this fight, and another fight that I'm also looking forward to is the debut of Michael Venom Page will be taking on Kevin Holland in a fight that I feel like it has been getting buzz since Michael Venom Page was signed, but I feel like the buzz is worn off, and now there's reports coming out from various sources that Page is at one of the most difficult training camps of his entire career, and I think sometimes coming into your UFC debut, you don't really know what to expect, and I would argue that this is this is uh, this is Page's toughest test in probably a couple years, and definitely no matter who Kevin Holland is fighting, I don't think it's going to be an easy fight. What are your early implications on this fight? And do you think that the hype train gets derailed, or do you think that Page shows that he belongs in the UFC?
Man, it's really tough because at first I did favor Michael Venom Page, but I just went back over his wins, right? And I mean, obviously he got the rematch win against Douglas Lima, but that was a pretty, out of it Douglas Lima, if you ask me. I think, the first fight was a better indication of what a prime Douglas Lima would do to MVP. And I mean, I just go through his record. Even now, I'm going through his record, and it's just like he really doesn't just have that many impressive wins. Yamamuchi was one of his most impressive wins, and it was a leg kick that did it within 26 seconds. That was an amazing win, but not not the way you wanted to see him win in a sense. You know what I'm saying? And
No,
just all his other wins are like, are any of these guys even close to the level of Kevin Holland? I don't
I
think
I
so.
I don't think so.
And
No,
that's my problem is there are good names in Bellator. There were good names in Bellator when he was fighting there. He just wasn't really fighting them. So I think Bellator did a great job of knowing what they had in him, which wasn't necessarily a champion, but was a very fun highlight reel type of fighter. Does he highlight reel Kevin Holland? I don't think so. And that's crazy because I really did think MVP had the edge in the striking, but I just don't see him putting Kevin Holland down and out the way he has with some of these other guys. So I think I like Big Mouth here, man. I think I like Kevin Holland by decision, honestly.
yeah, I'll take Kevin Holland by decision as well. And if I were to have it, he's one best bet for this week. I would say that the over 1.5 rounds in this fight is very possible.
Oh, I like that
Just
bet.
just because the UFC debut jitters and everything else, you don't know what version of Michael Venom Page you're going to get, and we could very well be wrong on this by the time next week rolls around. But yeah, I just think being in the UFC is different than making your debut and coming over from Bellator after several years. That's not easy. So I'm gonna say Holland as well. Holland a decision and a big win and a big feather in his cap, considering that he likes to go between a couple of different divisions and be the wild man that he is. So that should be a good fight as well.
It's gonna be a
Um,
great one.
to open up the main card, we have former champion Petr Yan taking on Song Yadong, and obviously Petr Yan has been on a bit of a losing skid over the last few years. I think that this is a huge get right fight for him. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, for sure. I think that Peter Yan, it's been disappointing if you're a fan of Peter Yan. It's been very upsetting, disappointing. I mean, you kind of just want to see him win at this point. I mean, he had the back-to-back close fights. He had the DQ against Aljo, and then I mean, Marab just kind of did what he wanted with him in his last fight. It was so upsetting to see for most people that have been a fan of watching Peter Yan. I mean, his last win is against Corey Sandhagen, who's still a top name in the division, and it was a dominant win. It was a great fight. So I don't even know how to pick this fight because Yan is just seems like he's off at this point, but he's not. He's having close fights most of the time. And then Song Yadong, I mean, he's an animal. 10-2-1 in the UFC. I mean, he really looks like he's evolved over time. It's like every single fight you see Song Yadong, it's like he's evolving and getting better. And it's hard to pick against him at this point, especially knowing the situation with Yan. But Man, I don't know. It's hard to pick against Yan still too. This is one of the tougher picks I have on the card, just because I don't know what Petr Yan will show up. I really don't. I mean, are we gonna get the former champion Petr Yan, or are we gonna get the Petr Yan that showed up against Merab? I know obviously Song doesn't have the same style as Merab, but he Yan could just be, on the back end of his career at this point. He's only 31, but we've seen guys, have harder fall offs than that. So I really
Yeah,
don't know.
I mean the most notable one being Henan Barrow, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So there's been times we've seen guys that aren't necessarily old have a career fall off, and this 3-fight losing streak for Yan could be the start of it. But I'm gonna go against that, and I'm gonna say I think Petr Yan can outwork him and win a unanimous decision here.
I don't know with the way that Song Yadong has been competing lately. I'm gonna have to disagree with you, and I'm gonna say that Yadong gets it done. It's gonna be a good fight though. That's for sure. It's gonna be some sort of controversial decision, but some some way I think the judges are gonna award it in his favor, and it's gonna be the most debated decision of Q1 in 2024. That's my that's I call it. It's gonna be a decision that irks people, and you who could very well see an immediate rematch depending on how close the fight is. This is the one fight where I can confidently say that it will go the distance, and it will be close.
Yeah, no, I think both of these guys have like ridiculous chins. Like ridiculous chins. Like neither of these guys really even get caught flush, let alone knocked out. I swear. Both of these guys can take some bombs, and usually they're not getting hit. So that's definitely always, a positive indication that the fight might go to a decision, especially in 3 rounds. And your pick is good. I mean, this is my hardest fight to pick on the card. I might end up picking Song Yadong by the time fight time rolls around because I'm really not sure what goes on in this fight. I'm not sure what kind of Petr Yan we see, and I think that's the biggest question. Because if Petr Yan is back in championship form, he should beat Song. But
For sure.
if he's gonna be, still hurting from these past couple losses and everything, Song could easily take advantage and take it. I mean, it's really just such a close fight. I can't confidently pick a winner.
For sure, that's definitely a debated one. And then moving on to the featured prelim that will be taking place on ESPN just before the pay per view. A heavyweight bout between Curtis Blaydes and Jailton Almeida. This is your classic striker versus grappler matchup. How do you see this one playing out? And do you think this is a must win for both guys? Because I certainly do.
Blaydes needs a win for sure, just because of the way his career has went. I mean, he had the title shot locked up, and fought Sergey Pavlovich, and had a bad fight IQ moment. I'm just gonna say it how it is. I mean, I was screaming at my screen for him to take Pavlovich down, and he didn't until it was too late, because it's frustrating to watch Curtis Blaydes sometimes. I really do enjoy watching Curtis Blaydes, but sometimes he just makes it way too complicated for himself, and it loses him the fight. Like as simple as that. I mean, Almeida's a young stud, and what I saw someone bring up that really made me lean a bit more towards Almeida, even though I really like Blaydes and he could very well win this fight. The speed difference, not just in their strikes, but in their wrestling. When you watch them wrestle, Almeida's fairly quicker. He has the quicker movements, the quicker like jumps, the fast twitches and everything. And when they're on the ground, he's very quick to reverse, very quick to get the position and stuff. Blaydes is pretty slow in terms of grappling. He doesn't have those fast twitches as much. He doesn't have that, you know, the quickness to him. And I think that might be what plays a big factor in this fight. I really liked what that person said. And I think I think the quickness in this fight might be the defining factor. I think they're both going to be wrestling a lot. I don't think this fight will be on the feet too long at all. It just depends on who the better wrestler is, and I think I'm going to have to go with the wrestling of Jailton Almeida. He's just been really dominant, and I have to go with him here.
Slightly biased, being that I'm from the Chicago suburbs. I have to take Blaydes to get out of his funk. He has to win. He has to win this fight. If he can't beat Jailton Almeida, then I worry that he might not be able to compete against the best in heavyweight anymore. So for that reason and that reason in one. I think Curtis Blaydes walks away with the win and starts out his 2024 on the right foot. So those are the only two that we disagree on, but it'll definitely be interesting.
Well, wait, Zen. I don't know. We missed a fight. Jack Della Maddalena versus Gilbert Burns.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that one?
So this fight is actually one I'm very much looking forward to because I think these guys are going to throw some hands in Miami. I think Gilbert Burns is going to try to get his home crowd pumped, and I think he's going to try to go in there and really throw that leather with Jack. And I don't think it's going to go good, if you want my honesty. I think Jack Della Maddalena is going to clip Gilbert Burns if they get into some of these boxing exchanges. Because, I mean, Jack has the technique, the power. Did you see the video that was posted on the other day?
I did.
With Jack Della Maddalena punching the punching bag, it flying off the chain, and then he just walked over to another punching bag and just kept going immediately. Not a single skip in his mind, not a single thought. I mean, Jack has some heavy hands, some clean boxing, and I think the Miami crowd is actually going to hurt Gilbert here because I think it's going to make him not want to have a boring fight like he kind of has his past couple where he's kind of just laying on opponents. You know what I mean? I think he's going to try to come out here, make a statement, and I think it's going to go against him. I think Jack's going to end up clipping him, and I have Jack Della Maddalena by first round knockout.
Really? I'm going to have to disagree with you here and say that title fight experience is title fight experience, and I think Gilbert Burns fighting in his backyard does him wonders, and I think this will be Della's most difficult fight, and I actually see him losing a decision, but he gives a very valiant effort.
I could very well see that too. I just, I feel like Gilbert just hasn't been very exciting lately, and I feel like that crowd is going to work against him, man. I really do. I think he's going to try to entertain the crowd more than he's going to try to win the fight at some point, and I feel like it's just going to hurt him bad. If he fights smart and grapples, and he's going to grapple for all 15 minutes, I would have to agree that he wins the fight. But I don't know. I have a feeling that once he hears that crowd, he's just going to want to brawl and make it a fun one.
All right. So with that being said, who do you think is going to walk away with fight of the night honors, and who do you think is going to walk away with performance bonuses?
That's a tough one. If I had to say, fight of the night, I'm leaning towards Poirier, Benoit, or Yan versus Song. Like I said, it just kind of depends on what Yan we get in that fight. I'd probably have to lean Poirier versus Benoit for fight of the night, and then for performance of the night, I'll go Jack Della Maddalena and maybe Jack Della Maddalena and Jailton Almeida, depending on what he does against Curtis Blaydes. Something along those lines.
Yeah, so my picks for the two performance bonuses, I'm gonna go Song Yadong as one of them, and the other one I'll take Sean O'Malley in the main event, and for fight in the night, we're gonna go with Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page. That's my fight in the night. Definitely a very interesting main card, and definitely a very good prelim. Had to close it up, but that's going to close the book on UFC 299. Moving over to the other side of the world on the boxing spectrum, we have Anthony Joshua taking on Francis Ngannou, and another one of these Saudi Arabia freak show fights. When you first saw this fight get announced a couple months ago, what were your early impressions? And now that we are finally just days away from the fight on DAZN Worldwide, I might add, what are your early predictions, and what do you expect to see from Spectacle Part 2, if you will? So
for me, I mean, I'm just going to say it how it is. I think Saudi Arabia is saving the sport of boxing. I
do too.
Wouldn't be interested in a lot of these fights that would have been happening had Saudi Arabia not jumped into the picture here and just started throwing money at the boxers, which is crazy because if I'm not wrong, the boxers already made pretty good money. So Saudi Arabia must be paying them really well.
Especially these two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is they've already made some really good money. So Saudi Arabia must be giving them a lot better money. So, but first impression is good on Saudi Arabia. I know obviously there's controversy with what they're doing and the whole sports washing thing. I don't care. I'm just a fan. I want to enjoy the sports, man. And they're making it so that I can enjoy the sports. And that's good for me. I definitely love this fight. Obviously, it's something that kind of needed to happen after Francis's crazy performance against Tyson Fury. I just sadly don't think he'll be able to replicate that performance. Joshua's Joshua's a tank, and obviously Fury is too, but Joshua's just very well in shape. Obviously Fury's not in shape, and I think that might have played a role into why the Francis fight with him was so close.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Josh was taking this very seriously, especially after seeing how the Francis Tyson Fury fight went. He doesn't want to get clowned like Tyson Fury did. He doesn't want to get dropped like Tyson Fury did. He's probably very hungry, and I'm going to assume that with all the money on the line, all the stakes on the line, and a potential Tyson Fury fight on the line, I guess, that he's going to be taking this as seriously as possible. And I think he's really going to be training hard, you know, not taking this as a joke. I think he's going to be taking Ngannou as he would any other title defense, title fight, whatever. So I think Anthony Joshua probably shows Francis why he should have stayed in MMA. But obviously, Francis already proved his point in boxing. So this would just be a cherry on top if Francis could pull something off here.
For sure. I think Francis will give his best effort. I actually like the Tyson Fury fight. He'll shockingly knock Anthony Joshua down, but that's going to be the only. It's going to be the only positive 8 counter of this entire fight. I think 11 out of the 12 rounds are going to be Joshua doing what Joshua does, which is frustrate you, use his size, use his range, try to push you up against the ropes and win this decision that way. So yeah, I'm going to go with Joshua too to win this. In whatever they're calling this thing, knockout KO, something like that. There's going to be no. There's going to be no knockout KO as needed in this one because I think it'll go the distance. So
yeah, I'm not sure if it ends up going the distance. I'd say probably, but now that you mention it, I think it probably does go the distance. But I could definitely see a late finish for Joshua here, maybe even a late finish for Ngannou here. I don't know. I think I definitely favor Joshua though.
Okay.
For sure.
All right, moving back over to the recap side, we had UFC Vegas 87 take place this past week, and we had Jairzinho was in strike, upsetting Gaziev in what was, to be quite honest with you, a very boring a main event that had a doctor stoppage attached to it. Just briefly, we don't really need to spend much time on this, considering that the fight is what it was. What were your thoughts on Rosenstrike's performance, and do you think that Gaziev just kind of took this fight off because that's how I thought, and I just thought as the fight continued, he was just taking it less and less seriously, and obviously you had the eye issue in the fight, and the fight was stopped. So
I'm heartbroken at this result. I'm not gonna lie. I
I
really
know.
like Shamil Gaziev. You know how much I liked Gaziev. I was hyping him up all fight week, even before fight week. I've been hyping him up for a bit, and yeah, this one hurt to watch. I just feel like he was a little too rushed to the top of the weight class. Looking back on it, I mean, he had one UFC fight and got, Rosenstrike, who's been in the top 10, 15 for ever at this point. So it's just, it was a tough performance for sure. He didn't look good. Not going to sugarcoat it. And I think
No.
I think it might have just been a little too soon for him. But I also get why they did it so quickly because he's already 34. It's not like he really had the time to take a couple losses, go on a title run after. Like he kind of needed to do it now or soon. So I get it. It just sucks that, we'll never see him in a main event slot again, more than likely, unless he really puts together a crazy win streak. And it's just a shame because this fight, like you said, wasn't good. And I thought Gaziev was what, some fresh blood in the division would have been nice to see him make a run, but I don't know how confident I am in that anymore after watching this one.
All right. Well, with all that being said, we will gladly look forward to who's in strike versus Derek Lewis, maybe for UFC 301 in Brazil, and
Yeah,
there we go. So
I love that.
hopefully he gets done at the matchmaking meeting, or hopefully it it done and can get announced soon at the matchmaking meeting earlier today by the time this episode is released, because that's the only thing that the UFC you should be thinking about right now outside of outside of who the heck is going to have playing UFC 306. But I digress.
No, you're 100% right, Zan, by the way. That's the fight we need. And also, I just want to give a shout out to Vinicius Loke Dog Oliveira for the KO of the year in his debut. This kid is
Absolutely.
special. This kid is awesome. I knew he was going to be a beast after his Contender Series win. He gets an even tougher opponent than he originally had on short notice. So Pai gasses after dominating him for the first round and a half, and Oliveira just put it on him, man. That flying knee was a thing of beauty.
Did you not tell me last week when we were on the air that something very, very similar in this fight could happen, and it did?
Exactly, and that's the thing, is these were two amazing prospects. So Pai is still a great prospect. I don't care that he got knocked out. And Oliveira, man, I mean, this kid is something else. His knockouts are just always so entertaining. His fights are always so entertaining. Please keep an eye on this kid, because he seriously is something special.
For sure. And back over to the news and notes side here briefly. Rafael Fiziev tells a Russian outlet that that there are rumblings, although nothing is official, that there could be a UFC 165-pound division in the works. The UFC has obviously been very adamant that this will never happen, but given Fiziev's stature in the UFC, given that he's been a contender for a long time, I think I'm on the 70-40 train, or the 70-30 train, this may happen sooner rather than later. I was very surprised to hear him say it. Obviously, the UFC has yet to comment on this, but I think very, very more than likely this 165-pound division could actually clean some things up in the mess that is 155, 170, and 185. So overall, just give me briefly what you think of this development. Do you think this division takes place, and if it is going to take place, when do you think it gets established, and why?
Man, it's tough, because the first thought I have in my mind when he says this is they're going to try to make McGregor Chandler for the 165-pound belt. And, like, I get it. It's Conor McGregor. But, man, we just went over this with Colby Covington. Just because you had a name a couple years ago, and just because you were a good fighter a couple years ago, doesn't mean you need to come back and get a title shot. I mean, McGregor's on a losing streak. And why would he get a title shot? So if that's what they plan on doing with this, I'm not happy. But we have talked about a 165-pound weight class for years at this point, the MMA world.
Right.
I don't think it would hurt, but then they'd also have to move welterweight to 175. I don't think any welterweights would be complaining necessarily, but it's a big change. It's a big change in the sport, and it'd be a big move in general. I'd be more interested to see what fighters go to this weight class. What welterweights want to drop the extra 5 pounds, what lightweights don't want to drop 10 more pounds. And I don't know. Who do you think would be champion of like a 165-pound weight class? Like, who's the first name that comes to mind for you?
Like, who do I think could be champion?
Yeah, like, who do you think would be, like, one of the top fighters of the 165-pound division if it were to get made?
Poirier or Gaethje. Poirier or Gaethje.
See, I like that. I feel like one of the first names that comes to mind for me is Gilbert Burns, only because I know he used to fight at lightweight and now is a welterweight. So he's definitely someone I'd consider as like potential champion material for that weight class. But it also depends on who would be in that weight class. I'm really not sure. So I was just wondering what you thought about that, because who would they have fight for the inaugural 165 title if that was a thing?
I think you could easily, if Dustin Gaethje versus Max Holloway goes the way we think it's going to go, which is going to be an all-action war, you could convert the BMF title into the new 165-pound champion. That's what that's what I think.
As long as Gaethje is okay with moving up to 165 and having a belt there instead of trying at lightweight still, that makes a lot of sense to me, Zan. I actually really like that idea, because
Yeah, just convert it.
I
And
mean,
it
all the
just
BMF fights.
it just saves so much of a hassle too. You
Yeah,
wouldn't have to go through. You wouldn't have to. You will have to build up a fresh crop of fighters, but you could basically invite fighters to the 165-pound division, and whoever doesn't want to go to it stays at 55 or 70.
and that's the thing. You said like convert the BMF title. The BMF title has always been fought at either lightweight or welterweight so far. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's only been at those two weight classes so far. So it
Yeah,
kind
right. Because Nate Diaz versus Masvidal was at 170. So yeah, you're exactly right. Hmm.
and that's the thing is like okay, so it kind of fits because it, that all the fights between for the BMF title have been 155 or 170. So making that BMF title right in the middle at 165 would actually make a lot of sense to me. That's a really good idea, Zed.
For sure. I mean, I'm no matchmaking expert, but I do aim to please. And if the UFC decides that it's a good idea, I will hopefully take full credit for it, even though, of course, I'm not expecting to. So, um, any with that being said, the final topic that we wanted to get into in today's episode was one that was kind of overlooked. Dana White with, and then yet another podcast after saying that he would never go on podcasts again. And this particular podcast, as he told Julian Edelman, former longtime New England Patriots wide receiver, that Vladimir Putin gifted Khabib Nurmagomedov $20 million in Russian property, meaning cars, houses, you name it, to Khabib after his win over Conor McGregor at UFC 229. I guess the only thing I can say about it is that and he talks and it pays to be it pays to be super famous and it pays to kick people's asses because if it wasn't for him beating Conor McGregor, I can guarantee you that none of those benefits would have ever happened.
Oh yeah, for sure. If he lost to Conor McGregor, he's not getting that $20 million in property or anything like that. So no, you're 100% right. I uh I think Khabib did the country a favor with that one. I think the country clearly was riding on a big win there, and I mean he pulled through in a big way. So obviously, I guess Khabib has a good relationship with Putin, and you know, Putin's out here giving him gifts. So hey, maybe he does come back for UFC 300 like they're offering him.
Who knows? Well, with UFC 300 almost a month away, I highly doubt that's even remotely possible.
No,
But
I know. I'm messing around just because of the news that came out this past week that Khabib said that they reached out to Ali about UFC 300, and he told Ali not to tell him about any fights. So poor Khabib is never coming back, but I'm happy. I'm happy that he's happy.
it's crazy. So, well, with all that being said, that's going to do it for episode 74 of the MMA Outsiders presented by Wolf Spreads. Thank you to everybody that tuned in to support the show. We just wanted to remind you once again and to be sure to check out youtube.com/ETV network for all of our various podcasts. And be sure to download Acast or wherever you get your podcast to listen to the audio only version. We're also coming back over here to listen to the video feed as well. It's whatever you prefer, as they say, however you get your podcasts. And of course, just as a reminder, I am and Bando, that's Pat Dan, and it's to my right on episode 75. We're going to make sure that we recap everything that was UFC 299. We're going to recap Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua and whatever other crazy news and notes come up in the world of combat sports. But thank you again for tuning into this episode. And again, we just wanted to remind you before we tell you to enjoy the fights, Beej Piper, have a great weekend, and we will see you all on the road pretty soon again. And this has been another production of the MMA Outsiders presented by Wolf Spreads and the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. We will see you all next week.